Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Sebi. So nice seeing you again. As part of our Series A launch week, we're highlighting how teams are using Vellum to turn AI ideas into real useful products. Ask Redfin is a fantastic example. We've been working on this for a while now, for about 2 years, and this product is built right into your main Redfin app, reaching millions of users. I'd love to learn from you on how you made it happen with the team, specifically how you followed a test-driven development process using Vellum, what you learned along the way, and what's next. So thank you for joining. And yeah, I'd love to maybe start with you sharing a little bit about yourself and the AI products that you've built on Vellum.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to be here, Akash. We've loved working with Vellum. Um, I'm Sebi. I'm a product manager at Redfin, thinking about all things consumer AI. The first product we launched was Ask Redfin, which was a home Q&A chatbot or virtual assistant that lives on our listing pages. The basic problem we were trying to solve was uh, listings have a lot of information. People have very specific questions. We had an old feature on the site called Ask a Question, where people could submit a question, it would get sent over to a human. They would hear back anywhere from the range of minutes, hours to never. And we thought that experience could be way better using AI. So we launched Ask Redfin to solve that problem.
Awesome. Were there any internal hypotheses or success criteria you had before launching the initial version?
Yeah, we had our one critical hypothesis was just that more people would ask questions when presented with a chat interface than just a blank text box via ask a question. And the second hypothesis we had was that this improved experience would lead to more conversion, so more leads being generated for our agents.
Nice. And why did you think, so maybe rewind back 2 years, like why did you think you needed a development platform for your AI development process? And how did you end up choosing Vellum?
Yeah, there were two key reasons. The first one, I think, applies for any kind of new technology or new space. We were mindful that generative AI was new, that things were changing week by week, that best practices were being defined, every single week in a new way. And we thought that it would be an accelerator to work with a partner that was seeing this happen in many different instances, not just in our own instance. So the first reason was just we thought it'd be faster to work with a strong thought partner. The second reason was as we had started to figure out what we wanted to do to build Ask Redfin, one thing that kept coming up was kind of test-driven development. We're in a very heavily regulated space. For example, we care a lot that our answers in our chatbots or our virtual assistants respect fair housing law. And we wanted to work backwards from a set of test cases and kind of iterating towards a certain fairness or fair housing compliance threshold. And we thought a lot about whether we should build a scaffolding for that, but that felt like something that wasn't really differentiated towards Redfin and that probably existed somewhere else. And that's how we stumbled upon Vellum.
Got it. And how did you, who are the different users? Like, how did you go about adopting the test-driven development methodology and approach in your development process using Vellum?
Yeah. The users of Vellum were primarily me, the product manager, um, and the engineers on my team. Um, we and I guess we think about like test driven develop like there's I think two parts to test driven development. There's one part which is the actual development of the test suite or the test cases, and that's something that you should do maybe outside of a platform. For example, with fair housing, we worked with our legal team to come up with you know on the order of a few hundred like really interesting test cases, question answer pairs that would really test the bot on fair housing compliance. Um, Once we had that, we were able to upload that into Vellum's test suite capability, and then began the process of actually iterating um, the on the virtual assistant logic to try to reach a certain fair housing compliance threshold. And that iteration was mainly done by me and the engineers on my team.
Yeah, while thinking about this conversation, Sebi, I actually put a prompt in ChatGPT asking it that, hey, I'm a South Asian male looking for an apartment in Brooklyn. What neighborhoods should I look at? And it happily gave me a long response of good neighborhoods to consider. And I'm guessing that's not fair housing compliant, right? So how did you guys, whatever you can share, like what was the secret sauce and how did Vellum help with being fair?
Yeah. I mean, it breaks down into a few pieces, right? We had this big test suite of really interesting or challenging and nuanced for housing questions. Um, and basically our role was to figure out, hey, given this question, what does the assistant output and does that comply with fair housing or not? And one thing that we needed to do is, the first time we did that, we very manually with legal went through every single test case or every single generated answer, and we decided, hey, this passes fair housing and this doesn't. And we got to some sort of baseline threshold on how compliant it was on this kind of like challenging test case or test suite. That wasn't going to scale if every time we made a change to a prompt or to some part of the pipeline, having to redo the labeling for hundreds of test cases was just not really going to be a feasible thing to do. So one thing that Vellum helped us do was develop a fairness metric or a fairness guardrail. We called it a fairness evaluator at that point, but the language has evolved a little bit, which was an LLM judge that looked at a question, looked at an answer, and made a determination, a binary determination on whether it passed our fair housing guidelines or it didn't. And what that let us do is iterate way faster and with confidence. We were able to tune that metric on its own and say, oh, okay, this metric aligns with human labeling, human labels, X% of the time. And once we got it to a threshold that met our needs, we were able then to run that fairness evaluator on the interesting fairness test suite.
Yeah.
So what that let us do was, we can make one small tweak to a prompt in the virtual assistant, click run on our fairness test suite, and a few minutes later get back, hey, this passed this passed the fairness test suite 95% of the time versus last time it was 90% of the time, and that made iteration way faster.
Yeah, so this sounds like the fairness evaluator was your in-house LLM legal team. Like it was just a legal rep sitting in Vellum helping you with fairness for any new test case that came in. That's fun. I also remember building some of this prompt out over a weekend. That was a fun project you gave us.
Yeah,
in the day.
yeah. Vellum was critical in helping us figure out how to even get started on writing this LLM judge prompt. We were just pretty used to writing bullet points, and the Vellum team, you, Akash, and Noah brought us a lot of structure and a good template to think through how to actually have the LLM judge be steerable and answer and kind of make the determination correct.
That's awesome. So I guess when you think about your original launch timeline and process, how did Vellum improve your development cycle? Maybe time to market or maybe quality of the response. What do you think you wouldn't have had if you weren't working with us?
I think it would have taken us a lot longer. I think that's what it comes down to. I mean, I don't think we would have compromised on the quality of responses. So I think we would have eventually got into a high quality enough product. Without Vellum, it just would have taken us way longer. The test case scaffolding that I was talking about earlier was super critical for us to kind of do this test-driven development approach. We spoke about fairness, but there were a few other kind of criteria for launching the assistant that were important to us. I'll name one more. Correctness really mattered to us, the fact that it wasn't hallucinating answers from the context. And so when you have multiple things you care about in an answer and evaluating whether the assistant is complying with those things, you need this software to help you kind of manage that process. It gets pretty complicated pretty quickly. The second thing that it really helped, the second reason why it really helped us move faster was because of the low to no code visual builder. I, as the PM, was able to own a lot of the actual development of the virtual assistant. And what that kind of helped us do is, one, just gave us basically an extra half engineer on the team, so we could just do more with less people. But two, I was a little bit closer to, as a PM, you're a little bit closer to the needs of the user and the goals of the business. And so it kind of tightened the feedback loop on the most critical part of the product. So rather than engineers implementing something, me testing it, giving feedback, and so on, I could just tighten that feedback loop, and we were able to move a lot faster.
That sounds fun. So what was the impact both externally and internally? Let's start with internal. So I guess your Ask Redfin use case was probably one of the biggest, first major AI product launches at Redfin. How did that result in more use case proliferation of AI applications in Redfin?
Yeah, I mean, once we partnered with Vellum and had a strong platform for building GenAI apps, and people saw the success of Ask Redfin and how smoothly that launch went, we started to see a lot more use cases get adopted. So We're seeing use cases in particular on an agent tool side of things where we're using AI to make our agents better agents, help them manage more customers with the same amount of work, maybe personalize their outreach in more interesting ways. There's a lot of interesting stuff that team's doing right now. And we're also working on a few other consumer-oriented products that I can't really get into right now. One thing that I could maybe mention is we're thinking about how to use AI to better organize the listing details page.
Yeah.
Just always kind of on the hunt for figuring out how, or helping users figure out whether the home is right for them. There's a lot of information on listing pages. It's super unstructured. It varies by MLS to MLS, and we think AI can play a role there.
Yeah, obviously, like there's so much potential. I recently started my house hunt. Maybe I won't buy one now. Maybe I buy something a few years from now. It's just so overwhelming as a user to go about making the biggest purchase of your life. And I think AI, a trusted AI co-pilot, probably has a very important role to play in navigating this journey for millions and millions of Americans. So I'm excited to see what you guys build next. Back to Ask Redfin. What was the market feedback? And was there anything surprising that you learned?
Is there anything surprising? Well, the feedback was quite positive. People generally like the experience of getting instant answers way better than waiting minutes, hours, or never getting a response to the question. And we were able to solve that need of getting a question answered without being super pushy. One of the problems with the old experience was you'd send a question and then an agent would try to call you and text you and email you and try to get you on the phone to try to sell you a service. But oftentimes we see that users are asking questions because they're not quite sure where they are in the process yet, and they might not be quite ready for an agent. So the feedback's been honestly pretty great. There's things to improve, of course. Sometimes the assistant hallucinates. Sometimes the assistant can be too pushy, despite our best efforts to stop it from being that. But it has been quite positive.
That's awesome. And any surprising learning from this whole journey?
I think one thing that was surprising was we did think that we were gonna see. We hypothesized that we would see more conversations via chat, and we did. What we also hypothesized was that the nature of the conversations or the questions being asked would change. So, for example, say 80% of the questions are asking questions about the property itself, details about the property itself, from the old Ask a Question feature. We expected that rate would change when we launched Ask Redfin. We thought, hey, with a chat interface, with something very broad, with the rise of AI, people would be asking very broad questions, or maybe unstructured questions, or maybe questions that touch other parts of the journey, like home search or how much should I offer, etc. We didn't really see that. We saw that rate kind of stay pretty similar. People were still asking the same types of questions. They were just asking more, more of those types of questions. And that was kind of surprising to me. One of the ways that we've kind of internalized that is the way you frame up an AI product really determines the types of questions you're going to get. People have started to build an intuition that, just because it's this empty text field, you shouldn't just type in anything.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe that's something that you can do in ChatGPT, but if it's a product on Redfin.com, specifically on a listing page and framed around home Q&A, you should ask a home question. You probably shouldn't be asking about, even neighborhood questions, but you shouldn't be asking about how much should you put in an offer on a home, or what contingencies should you waive, etc.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's clear that you guys are trailblazers and leading the path for consumer AI adoption, because you're learning things like this, and you're also very early in market for a major consumer-facing product. What advice would you give another consumer product team thinking about embedding LLMs in their application?
I think the main thing is be really, and maybe this differs depending on how much risk you're willing to take on it as an organization. I think for the average organization, you should spend some time up front trying to think about what makes a really good answer for your virtual assistant. or your chatbot or whatever you want to call it, and kind of be really methodical about like what kind of different attributes an answer might contain, uh, and share that with folks internally and make sure
Yeah.
that people are aligned with that. And don't just stop at just thinking high level and then writing it down. Think about it high level, write it down as this kind of rubric, and then try to grade answers using that rubric and get back together with your team and say, is our rubric even right? Don't even argue about labels. Just do like one round of like rubric refinement.
Yeah.
Because what you're gonna find is a few things. One is you might have missed attributes that were important, but also you're probably gonna figure out that um, like language is a pretty fuzzy thing, and people might interpret the same phrase or sentence in pretty different ways. And if it's hard for your team as humans to align on what a certain attribute means, first off, that's just an issue because you should probably figure out what your product should do. But
Yeah.
second, it's going to really be painful when you're trying to tune the LLM or the
Yeah.
actual application to do that thing because it's not going to understand what you really want, or it's going to be inconsistent. So maybe
Yeah.
that's maybe the top thing I'd say. Start work a little bit backwards from what a good answer is, and do like a round of iteration on what a good answer really means internally before honestly even really diving deep into like the prompt engineering and the pipeline
Before writing a
development,
single line
honestly.
of code or a single prompt, like
Yeah.
you want to align on what good looks like and work backwards from the target quality, cost, and latency of the system.
I do think you should write like, maybe not writing a line of code, but I do think you should prototype something very simple. Like if like say you're building, let's not use a real estate example. Say you're building like a shopping assistant. Like I do think you should like think of your rubric, write like a 2 sentence prompt on like you're a shopping assistant for X, answer questions, and run a few of your sample queries against that, and then have your team kind of judge using your rubric how good those answers
Yeah.
were. Because I think you need like a starting point of like what answers are generated. I think that kind of kickstarts the whole like, okay, are we thinking about this the right way process?
Got it. And also with more recent tools like Lovable and Bolt coming out to market, you can even whip up a very simple prototype on the front end to let more users interact with this simple application that you've built and have them give feedback on the responses.
Exactly. That's probably the second thing too. It is so easy now to spin up a prototype, to spin up an internal tool for people to play around with an app, to annotate conversations, to annotate and create test cases. It is so easy. I literally created one in the last week, and I'm not a developer.
Yeah.
So leverage that.
Yeah, I remember when we started this about 2 years ago, there was an internal testing phase which had some time associated with it, but I think the time would be much shorter now with these new prototyping tools that have come up.
100%. Yeah.
That's awesome. And in this whole like development loop, where exactly has Vellum helped you move faster? Like what about your workflow is now much faster with Vellum versus without Vellum?
I think about this process as like analyze, like prototype, analyze, measure, improve. And I guess
Yeah,
prototype and improve are the same thing, like build.
yeah,
And it helps with everything, honestly. The visual builder, as I called out before, like helps you prototype something quickly, and makes it really easy to make changes once you know where the problems are. The test suite and evaluation capability lets you quickly look through, hey, given this input, here's the output that it gave, and label those things, and measure with test suites again, and the ability to create LLM judges and interesting metrics. You can very quickly measure, hey, this is where my application is failing. This is where it's outperforming. I need to go focus on this issue, and try to get that number to go up. And in particular, it helps you kind of protect against regressions. If you've got like 5 attributes you care about in an answer, and one of them is failing really badly, and you throw all your effort on trying to solve that problem, an issue that other teams sometimes have is they play whack-a-mole. They fix this problem, but now another attribute is collapsed, and you don't find that out until way later. With Vellum, at least, you have these test suites. You have this ability to just like quantify how accurate or how good your virtual assistant is, and you can very quickly notice, hey, I made this change, it improved fairness, but it dropped correctness by X%, and I gotta strike the right balance.
yeah. That's cool. Yeah, internally we call this the build, evaluate, deploy, and monitor loop. So you build it in
Nice.
the orchestration layer, evaluate it using the test suite, deploy to a staging or production environment, and then monitor for edge cases in production. And a big thing that we're working on, which likely won't be released this quarter or even next quarter, is think about this, right? You have all of your test cases and metrics defined in Vellum. We can like try out various combinations of prompts, models, retrieval techniques, orchestration techniques to come up with the build, like the framework that actually clears all of your eval test cases and gets you to the frontier quality consistency, kind of like automating the loop. We're
Yeah,
very excited about that. I think that's definitely the future. And we hope to roll this out to you and our other customers soon enough.
that sounds awesome.
Cool.
AI on
Well,
AI.
AI on AI, exactly. We'll have Vellum Copilot, so natural language to workflow generation, synthetic test case generation, and then the AI on AI loop. So all that's coming soon, thanks to just the learnings that we've gotten from you guys.
Nice.
Anything else you wanted to add, Sevi, while like reflecting on our last couple years working together?
I mean, just I don't know about anything to add. It's just things have really changed. Like, it's crazy how much more mature the industry is than 2 years ago. It's crazy how much better models have gotten. Um, and I'm excited to see what's next. Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking the time, Sebi, and really appreciate you working with us this whole time.
Yeah. Thanks, Akash.